Hello and welcome to the Pre-Shift Podcast, the show featuring real restaurant people, real stories, and real advice to build high-performing teams. I'm DJ Costantino and I'll be your host. Today on the show, I'm joined by Zach Feinstein.
My name is Zach Feinstein. I'm the CEO and co-owner of the Feinstein Group. We own and operate three brands in 4 locations here in Tampa Bay. We have the Living Room, the Black Pearl, and Sonder Social Club.
Zach and his wife Christina founded the Feinstein Group in 2014, and they operate 4 restaurants in the Tampa, Florida area, including the Black Pearl, the Living Room, and Sonder Social Club. Zach was drawn to the restaurant industry, working in nearly every role from pizza box folder to global director. He honed his skills at the University of Central Florida's Rosen School of Hospitality Management. In 2022, Zach and Christina won the Tampa Bay Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Award, the first couple to receive it together. On today's episode, Zach discusses the innovative compensation model that they use at their restaurants, a commission-based pay for servers coupled with a 20% service charge. Zach explains the strategy behind this approach and its positive impact on staff retention, front and back of house relationships, and the overall guest experience. Just a reminder, if you enjoy the show, please be sure to follow us and sign up for our newsletter, The Food Runner, to get all the latest episodes and so much more. Without further ado, here is my chat with Zach. Well, Zach, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So I want to dive in a little bit about the Feinstein Group and the restaurants. Tell me a little bit about the history of the group and how you got started and how you've grown to where you are today.
Yeah, actually, June 30th of this year will be a decade that we've been in business. So my wife and I ended up buying a very small restaurant called the Black Pearl here in Tampa, in my hometown of Dunedin, Florida, which is a suburb of Tampa, 10 years ago. And basically, we just really focused on hospitality and creating a great experience for our guests. And it's snowballed from there. So a year after we bought the Black Pearl, we bought the Living Room brand from a different family, kind of revitalized that brand and did a reimaging. And then after that, we opened a barbecue restaurant that closed during COVID, and then a craft cocktail concept. And then we have all sorts of irons in the fires all over the place. But definitely been a wild ride and super fun. And it's kind of surprising to think that I've been doing it for 10 years now. So we started when I was 25 and, now I'm 35. So.
And as CEO of a hospitality group, what does your day-to-day look like? Where do you spend the most time?
It depends, man. I'm kind of all over the place. We do have a little home office here in Dunedin. I spend some time there, but I like really being in the stores. It's, I think you get the most accomplished, get to work with the team, get to see our guests, which I love to interface and interact with our guests. So I'd probably say it's a wide variety, but most of the time I'm in the stores.
I want to dive in to kind of the big question here. So you guys have a very different way of doing things when it comes to compensation for the team. Servers work on a commission model, and you have a 20% service charge. You have a lot of stuff on your site explaining that, some videos and blog posts, but I kind of want to hear from you where this idea came from and what made you want to do it differently.
Sure. So my history in my working and professional career before we ventured into our entrepreneurship, was working in long-term strategy for a Fortune 500 company. And, when the new minimum wage law got passed, which I'm all for higher wages, I voted for the bill to be passed. It's great. But the way that restaurants are currently set up to pay employees, it doesn't necessarily work well because you have one group of employees that's going to be seeing like 100% increase in wages. And then, your back of the house or kitchen employees are still going to be struggling to get by. And there's a big disparity between those two parts of the restaurant. And we wanted to create, an environment in the restaurant that, advocated for no turnover. We want to keep our people. We want to keep our employees happy. As an organization, I'm a big fan of Danny Meyer's Enlightened Hospitality. So we are 100% employee focused. And so we wanted to see how can we get best in class wages to our people with the least impact across the board to everybody. And I did a lot of research and I found a guy named Chad McKay in Seattle. I think you've done a podcast with him. And he basically explained how he was able to create this thing called a commission model, and using a service charge and giving your service staff commission versus the traditional tip and tip out, really makes a different environment in the restaurant. And it's been very successful for us, for our employees. So and we made that transition in 2022. So it's been just under 3 years for us.
And what was that initial rollout like, changing, I think, on multiple locations, right? Changing how people are getting paid pretty rapidly. What was that like to roll out? I think it probably would have been easier had you opened that way, right?
Yeah. No, so it was definitely a transition. I think, and to understand, how we rolled it out, you have to understand how it works. But so in a traditional restaurant, you have whatever. I'm a server. You come in, you spend $100, and you tip me $20 or 20%. I'm typically going to take $5 of that, hand it to the bartender, $2 of that, hand it to a busser, maybe $1 to the host, and out of that $20, I'm going to take home, $11 to $13. So between 11 and 13% of my sales. In the commission model, we charge every guest a 20% service charge on to-go orders, but anything that's done in-house. And the server makes a flat commission rate. It's different for restaurants depending on how much support staff you had and what the tip outs were before your rollout. But essentially, with the commission, they make what they made before with hourly and a 20% tip. And then they're still able to earn gratuity on top of that. So they do above and beyond for a guest. And the guest wants to throw an extra $10 on that $100 example. They're going to leave the building with 25 or 30% of their revenue, which it's absurd for a restaurant. So that's how the program works in a nutshell. And when we rolled it out, it's nice because it's obviously you're using sales data. You're not hoping for generous strangers, right? It's easy math to do. So basically, we took every server that worked for us. We took their sales for the previous year. We took their tip revenue, their tip income for the previous year. And we actually compared them. We said, hey, this is, we were doing the model, and we assumed, I think it was like a 2% tip on top of the service charge. But we said, this is what you would make. And, we were able to show them, and that's how I actually help restaurants roll this out now. And so that's how we do it still. But it really is, very eye-opening when you see the difference because, on average, our service teams have been probably 30 to 40% more in income than they were before. And because we are able to pay them a commission rate, they're what's considered a 7I exempt commission employee. So there's no requirement for wage. So whatever we take them down from the minimum to whatever wage they're at, we're able to push that into the kitchen. So we've essentially, the Black Pearl, we haven't lost an employee in almost a year and a half. So, which is crazy. Yeah. But when we rolled it out, it definitely was something, it's very difficult to explain because it's so different. But when the guest or the staff grasp the concept, they really rallied around it. So it's been great. In the beginning, it was rough. We did have some controversy when we first started doing it, but we really got good at explaining it. I think we weren't as eloquent in our descriptions in the beginning, but since then it's been onward and upward. It's been great. So.
That's awesome. Do you find that, so the way it works with the 20% service charge that goes to the employee, and then it looks like you take 5% out for front of house?
Yeah. So at the living, again, it's different on every concept, right? Yeah. So at the living room, we have the most amount of support staff. So in the tipping model, our average tip out was around 7 to 8%. So of sales. Right? And so they were leaving, like I said, on 20% tip between 12 and 13%. So now they just get a flat 15% commission on any sale pre-comp, as long as it's not a mistake or something, pre-comp. And then any additional gratuities they take with them, do not pass go, whatever. And then the 5% that stays in that pool goes to help pay, like I did before, a tip out, it goes to help pay the support staff. So the difference doesn't actually cover it. So this program doesn't essentially save us a whole lot of money. What it does, though, is it saves us money in turnover. And so, you get a longer tenured staff, which, breeds better service and better food and better product. But really that 5% goes to pay, like we pay bussers between, 16 and $20 an hour. We pay barbacks between 18 and $25 an hour, whatever. But that's where that extra, the difference goes. And so like the, living room's 15%, Black Pearl 17% commission, Saunders 16% commission. It just depends on how much support staff we have in the building.
I see. And then are you finding that most diners are tipping on top of the service charge?
Yeah, again, it depends on brand, but typically, like the living room, we see an average about 5% on top. Like if you look at the whole year, you have some servers that are doing 12%. You have some servers that are doing 3%. But it also helps us because we can see as well, like what kind of hospitality our staff is providing on a pretty easy basis because is consistently earning extra gratuity. Obviously, they're doing a great job. So we take it very serious. I'm proud to say that we are one of the only restaurants in Tampa Bay that guarantees our employees income. But at the same time, we're one of the only restaurants groups in Tampa Bay that also guarantees a 20% experience. And so we take that equally as important as the employees getting paid is we got to give 20% service and hospitality to our guests. So we've like really upped the game when it comes to training and just like hospitality training, emotional intelligence training, to really make sure we can bring home that 20% and feel good about it every day. We don't want it to be, people say, well, what's the reason to, serve if you're it's guaranteed. But so we take it very serious. Yeah.
That makes sense. It's I guess it's acknowledging the fact that you are asking the diner for maybe more than they would regularly give, or you're not giving them. I guess you're right. Like they have the opportunity to kind of reflect the service with how much they choose to give, which kind of I think has been a big issue for hospitality. Is too much of the servers take home pay is based on the whims of a diner, whether it's reasonable or not. But it's also accepting the fact that if you're going to ask, you have to give that 20% service right as a floor.
100%. But it's so funny because I've obviously have talked about this a lot in the last 2.5 years, but it's only industry, right? Like you don't call a plumber to your house to fix your sink and the sink's leak and you call the plumbing company like, hey, he can't get paid. We gotta, it's like, it's absurd. And I don't know if you know the history of tipping, where it comes from. There's a great New York Times article about it, but it goes all the way back to the days of the Emancipation Proclamation. And basically companies didn't want to pay ex-slaves and really just never changed. And so obviously our economy is changing, the technology is changing, like so much is changing, and we've made the decision that it was time to change the way that we do this. And honestly, it's something that I've never regretted, and honestly, our staff is very happy with it. So it's been awesome.
I understand there was some pushback, some controversy initially. What did that look like, and how did you address it?
Yeah, it was mostly misinformation. So again, like I said, I don't think we were as eloquent as we could have been in the beginning with the explanation, and then also just being like outgoing to the press and the media about it. So there was a lot of misinformation in the beginning, and we really have gotten past that. But that was the big issue. Really, was just people didn't understand how it worked, and they're like, "What do you mean they don't get the full 20%?" And what do you? So we really have, as you said on our website, we have a lot of explanation. If you go to the restaurant, the host will tell you about it. The server tells you about it. A manager will talk to you about it. We have materials in the restaurant that explain it. So that was really where the controversy was driven from. And I'm proud to say that we definitely have squashed that, which has been great. But it was rough. It was like the first month and a half or 2 months that we rolled it out, it happened. I was on the news a lot explaining it. And but ever since then, like I said, we really make sure that the employee, number one, is the most important person to understand how it works. In the interview process, we're very upfront about it. We have like charts that show how it works. And yeah, and then once they understand it, they can articulate it to a guest. But that was definitely the hardest part of this whole thing for sure. Was the first month or two in boot up. So, and now I actually help. Like I said, I help restaurants roll it out, and using my mistakes, make sure that doesn't happen to them.
Absolutely. Was there any pushback from staff, or were they all for it when you implemented?
So in the beginning, again, it kind of depends on the brand, but in the beginning, when you explain this to someone, they're like, "What do you mean? Like how is this going to work?" But once you show them the data, and once we worked through everything and took the time to sit down with them and explain it, and really when they got that first paycheck, because once they got the first paycheck, it's very obvious it's better. But that I would say it was the only apprehension is like when you first start talking about it, like, what do you mean we're not going to do tips and tip outs and all that stuff. But for the most part, they've been supportive, and again, we have, the Black Pearl. I have a server that's worked there for all 10 years, before and after. Same thing at the living room. We have quite a few servers that have been there for 8+ years, through the transition without, yeah, they've been supportive. So it's been great.
What do you feel like it enables your staff to be able to do in a restaurant setting from an experience standpoint when they have these, they have this guaranteed income, as you say, and they know that they don't have to be subject to the whims of a diner to influence their take home pay.
Well, yeah, so there's a lot of things that happen in a tipping environment that we don't have to worry about. And one of those things is what I like to call a table bias, right? So, um, other cultures and we live in a very tourist driven area, and, other cultures, tipping is not part of their culture. It's not that they don't want to tip or that, it's bad service. It's just, in some countries you don't tip. And so, during season for us, and when the tourism is really on its peak here, you'll have a table of, let's say, a German family comes in to eat with us, and in Germany tipping really isn't a thing. In a tipping restaurant, a server's gonna be like, oh man, I'm not going to get tipped on this table, right? And it's terrible that happens, but it does happen. But in our restaurant, every single guest is the same, and so our team is really able to focus on making the guests feel welcome, making them feel seen and heard, making sure that the service is above and beyond. And again, they know they're going to get paid. But I think it actually makes them better at their job because they don't ever have to worry about, like you said, the generosity. It's any other job, right? We hear a lot from guests that have apprehension about the program. They say, well, what's the reason, what's your staff's motivation to work? And I'm like, well, what do you do for a living? I'm an accountant. Do you get tipped? No. Okay. Well, what's your motivation to work? Right. You like your job. So our team definitely is able to focus 100% on the guest. And I think it really creates an easier working environment for them. It's less stressful. And then on top of that, in the tipping model, you have all these, tip outs, and there's a lot of wage theft that occurs in normal restaurants. And that stressor is completely out of the way as well. So we ever just focus on the guests, focus on doing what we do well, and really, make the experience as good as we can.
It takes away a lot of the guesswork and the stress about, whose table is whose, and some of that competition that can fester in a front of house. What about the relationship between the front and the back of house? How are you seeing that, and what kind of impact does this model have on that?
So it has a great impact. So, one of the key components of this program is, and it's all based off the calculations and the data that we use, but we take a look at, what the servers are making on a 20% tip and with the full new minimum wage, what they'd be at. And then we look at where our back of house staff is, and we make a new rate. So like at let's use the Black Pearl, for instance, our servers basically forego an hourly rate, right? They earn like $90 an hour, but they're basically like a real estate agent, if you will, when it comes to the hourly rate. And then we push all that into the kitchen. And so the kitchen people know that, right? So they know that the servers are, being paid differently so that they can make more money. But it really kind of breaks down that whole like front versus back thing that happens in restaurants. And I feel a lot of our back of house staff is grateful for the program because obviously, we start dishwashers at $17.50, $18 an hour, and onward and upward from there. So it definitely, I think, all around has made more of a symbiotic environment between the departments in the restaurant, for sure.
Yeah. So basically, from what I understand, you're taking the hourly wages that you would have paid to servers who are now being compensated via the commission model, and you're pushing that back into the kitchen so they can make more than minimum wage or slightly.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's pushing back, and then we also have we have insurance. We give free life insurance to our employees. We have dental. We have vision. As we open more locations, we want to start doing tuition reimbursement. We're looking at doing all sorts of stuff. So it really puts us on par. Because when I talk about competition, other restaurants sure for sales, but what I look at is our industry is dying. Because would I want to go stand in a 110-degree kitchen for $15 an hour, or am I going to go stand in an Amazon warehouse for $22 an hour? It's air conditioned. I've paid vacation time, and that's what we're competing with, right? And so we want to make the industry as attractive as we can to young people getting into the workforce. And so anything we can do to add to that and be able to compete with these big players when it comes to benefits and pay, I'll take it all day long. So the more people that get on board with this, I feel like the better our industry will fare.
It's interesting you mentioned that you you don't find other restaurants to be who you're competing with for employees. And a lot of folks echo the same thing where they're kind of competing with gig economy type things. Like, you drive Uber for a day, you get paid out that day, and you don't have to think about it. You can work when you want, and that's kind of where they're competing with as well. So it's definitely a mindset switch.
Yeah, well, it's a mindset switch, and like I said, it's just such a different world now with technology. Like you said, Uber's a great example, and I think that's a big player too. But you got to make this industry has to become a much more attractive place to work than it has been in the past, because our employees have been marginalized, and it's not been a great industry to work in. It's a general statement, but I do think that there's a lot of people that are interested in it, and I do see, like when we open a job app, let's say like the Black Pearl, I'll get over 1,000 applications for a server in one day. Yeah. So like the folks that are in Dunedin that know us, that know our employees, they know it works. And, I'm hoping more and more restaurants will come on board because, it enables you to be able to give the health insurance. And it feels great as an owner to know that, we're a great place to work.
I'm curious now kind of where you see this as for the industry at large. Right. Is this something that you think it could work for every restaurant, or is it a specific type of restaurant? Is it full service only? What's your vision for this and how it scales for the industry as a whole?
Well, I will say I can't say the name of the restaurant, but I am working with a national brand that has over 500 locations to roll it out, and it's in the value space, so it's not in fine dining. The thing that matters about this program, and yes, I think it could be in any restaurant all around the world, but the thing is, you have to take service and hospitality seriously, right? Because in the inverse side of that, let's say we roll it out, and we're very selective when restaurants come to us to work and roll this out. The first thing we try to do is get to know them as operators and how they treat their employees and how they, want their guests to experience things and look at their training. Because like I said, it is a guarantee on both sides. And so it could be detrimental for the program if a lot of restaurants roll out that just, don't do what's right by the employee and the guests and just, try to make a bunch of money and whatever. But I do think that it's applicable anywhere. You could do it in a quick service restaurant. You could do it, in a fine dining. You could do it in casual, a breakfast place. Doesn't matter. You just have to take what you do seriously. And it sounds silly to me saying that, but there are some people that are just here for a paycheck, and it's not a lot of people. But this program is not for them.
I understand. So people that aren't trying to build their restaurant into something.
Well, yeah, just take pride in it, right? Like, they take every opportunity to make themselves better, make their restaurant better, make their employees better. And they're open to growth, and those people do really well with the program. But the ones that are stuck in their ways and like, this is how we've always done it, we're not going to change anything. We're just going to change the way we pay people. Because like I said, there is a much larger expectation, which is interesting, but a much larger expectation on what the guest will be receiving than in a normal restaurant, hands down. Like I can say that without a doubt.
Yeah. So what you're saying, from what I understand, you can't make this change without kind of doing more of a mindset switch and changing how you view your business and the industry as a whole, and how you treat your teams and how you approach that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of Danny Meyer, and he rolled out something similar to this, but he didn't allow extra gratuity on top, and there were some other things and he ended up rolling it back. The way that Chad, I think he took that and kind of tweaked it. But what it ends up doing is you have the ability to have servers that basically have an uncapped income. They can make as much as they want. But yeah, if the team feels supported by you and your guests feel like you're giving them what they're paying for, it's going to be successful, hands down.
Well, with that, I'm curious. We'll do some lightning round questions, but if folks are interested in pursuing this, or they want to learn more, where do you recommend they go for some more information? Yeah,
so I do a lot of speaking engagements here in Tampa Bay about the model, but email us or reach out to us on our the Feinstein Group. It's tfg.ventures. I'll personally reach back out and start a discovery call. What we like to do is, like I said, get to know the restaurant first and kind of the challenges. But yeah, we've now rolled it out, I believe, in 27 different restaurants. So it's kind of neat to see that it's kind of catching on. And I've gotten a lot more phone calls in the last 3 months than I ever have about it. So give us a call and we'd be happy to work with you on it.
I'll link everything in the description box. But before we go, I have a couple quick ones for you. Biggest opportunity you have this year in your restaurants?
Biggest opportunity this year in the restaurants, I think for us, we're making a big reinvestment in training, and so we're kind of rewriting the book and really taking a lot of that time with managers around emotional intelligence. And I think that's probably our biggest opportunity, what we're focusing on the most. And I think for us, we should get the most out of that. And, again, we want to make our employees feel like they know what they're doing, and they want them to feel welcome. And managers that have a high EQ, that know how to manage the floor well and manage people well, is going to make it all better. So that's, I think, the biggest thing we're focusing on. We do have some new restaurants or locations will be opening this year. But I think even more important than that is the training piece for sure.
Awesome. Unsung hero of your business?
100% our hourly employees, hands down. It does. I can't weigh one job over the other, right? Because if one job doesn't show up, everyone else is going to have a really bad day. So, but yeah, hands down, our business is successful because the people that clock in every day, like without a doubt.
You mentioned Danny Meyer and his restaurants, but other than that, any restaurant groups or folks you admire from afar?
Yeah, the Boca Group is great. I love that people first culture. So, and that's really, like obviously Union Square Hospitality kind of wrote the book on that, but Make It Nice is another company I really admire. I'm a huge Will Guidara fan, so anything that guy touches. But yeah, and then locally here in Tampa, the Proper House Group is a great group. They do really nice things for their people, and they're a great place to work, and they actually have really great restaurants. But yeah, no, it's nice to admire from afar. So quite a few.
Awesome. Favorite menu item, let's say at the Black Pearl.
Favorite menu item at the Black Pearl. I'd have to say I have a little bit of a sweet tooth, so I'd probably say our apple tart tatin, which is a classic French dessert, but we have kind of a twist on it. It's delicious though. Like I could eat it every day, every day for every meal, but I would not look good probably. So.
And then recent memorable meal, not at one of your restaurants, somewhere else.
The most recent memorable meal, I'll tell you, we have two little kids. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and like my wife and I recently just went to like a little hole in the wall fish shack and had peel and eat shrimp and fish tacos and like cold beer and just talked. That was probably the most memorable meal I've had in a little while. But I'd say Michelin star restaurant, De Liberai in the Netherlands was the best experience I've ever had in a restaurant. But it doesn't always have to be fancy though, just about the experience.
The peel and eat shrimp sounds really good right now. It's hot and
Right.
So, cool. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us today. And appreciate your time and all these valuable insights.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hopefully it was worth your time. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks again for checking out this episode of The Pre-Shift. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review and rating and share it with one of your friends to help the show grow. Also, be sure to subscribe to our Food Runner newsletter. Once a month, you'll get a roundup of resources, practical tips, and industry leader insights to learn more quickly. Sign up at 7shifts.com/foodrunner. Check the link in the description. Until next time.